It'll be instinctual. Like I saved a cockroach this morning. It's rare to find a cockroach in LA, but I found one in my bathroom, put it in a cup, took it outside, threw him up in the air, and then his wings came out, which was pretty cool. But what a miracle of nature. Apparently they haven't evolved since the days of the dinosaur. They have such a cool design, they don't need to evolve. They've got an incredible design that, somehow that they evolved into, which is so beautiful. So it's just a tiny example of being more aware and respectful to all living beings because they all play a part. I don't know what a cockroach contributes to the ecosystem, but I know they do. Everybody does.
Welcome to Modern Enlightenment, a sanctuary for your soul, where we'll go on a path of personal and spiritual development. I'm Austin Mao.
And I'm Chuchu Wang. We are your companions on this journey of self-discovery and spiritual connection.
Join us as we delve into the fusion of modern psychotherapy, neuroscience, psychospirituality, and shamanic plant sacrament ceremonies, exploring the transformative potential of psychedelics for the mind, body, and spirit.
Our mission is to guide you to a place of profound awareness where emotions can be felt.
Together, let's illuminate the way to a brighter, more enlightened existence.
Modern Enlightenment, where your journey to inner peace begins. Hello, my dear listeners. Hello. And Louie. This podcast, we are inviting the director of Fantastic Fungi and Gratitude Revealed, and who is also the pioneer of time-lapse cinematography. And he's just also a really wonderful human being and has a lot of experience and contribution in our consciousness and brought a lot of wonder and awe to this world, to our eyes. And he's hosting a podcast called Wonder and Awe. And Louie, please say hi.
So glad to be with both of you. Love your spirit, love your energy, love the great work you're doing to heal the world.
Yeah, and thank you for your support and your service for being our board advisor. I'm really looking forward to welcome you and Sarah to really experience our program. Mm-hmm. And, to start this podcast, I remember when we were in Tallinn together, I just watched you walking on the road and you just have this energy of wonder and awe. Like you have this childlike wonder when you see something that really struck me deeply. And, because your podcast called Wonder and Awe, I just want to ask you why this is important to you and why it's named this way and what's your relationship with wonder and awe.
I would say wonder is the intersection between art and science. We can look at the world through the eyes of science and trying to explain it mechanically, like how it works. And then the artist looks at the world and is able to speak in maybe more poetic ways about the energy of the world. Yet in a way, we're both telling the same story. We're both trying to figure out, what is it? What is reality? What am I looking at? How does things work? Where did it come from? And so wonder is that, beautiful intersection between art, science, and technology in a way. And it makes you present, regardless of what angle you're coming from. Because when you're filled with wonder, you're in the moment, you're staring at that flower, you're amazed by it, the sexual organ of the plant that's going to give you the fruits and nuts and vegetables that, makes our lives go forward. And if you're the romanticist, you're going to look at the colors and the aroma and the beauty of it. But both of those things enable you to become present and more aware of where you are in this moment. And when that happens, it opens up the floodgates to gratitude. Because now you're grateful for the fact that flower is there, that the bee landed on it, that it will someday give me food and make life go forward. How can I not be grateful for that awareness that I am observing life energy moving forward? What can be more important than that?
It seems like such a simple thing to observe a bee landing on a flower, and yet it presents this potent human experience once we focus our attention on it. Right. Mm-hmm. This conversation is already reminding me of a conversation I was having with a mutual friend of ours, Alex Gray, who held his birthday here at Ceremonia a year ago. And, we were sharing about how language is such a barrier to communicating, right? I say a word like love or like gratitude, and that might mean a completely different idea for you or for someone else, right? But ultimately, these words, these ideas exist to communicate feelings, right? And what we hit upon is it's the artist's job, right? It's incumbent on the artist to deliver that feeling in the medium of whatever that artist has as a medium. And yours being film and photography and just the beautiful imagery that you create, I'm struck by how your artistry is delivering an experience of wonder and awe from such a simple place.
Well, I think that what I try to do is, make the invisible visible and make the ordinary extraordinary. And by speeding up time to show the fact that the flower is opening and closing and being seductive, to zoom into the flower and look at the pollen, these little messengers of DNA that the bee, for example, will stick to the little tiny hair, and that DNA will then get transferred to another flower because, hello, plants don't have legs. They need to mate. And diversity is the key for evolution. So you can't mate with yourself. You got to mate with somebody else. But how are you going to get over there? And so you have a messenger service. It's like DoorDash. Hello, bee, come on, come over here and move my DNA forward, because the energy of the universe is about reproduction and moving DNA forward. And, it's, when you think about it, it's such a genius invention that nature created reproduction, because everything in the universe wears out. Everything. Mountains, cars, your body. And so, we literally do, stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, and everything is that chain of life. And what nature, came up with was this incredible design of evolutionary ability to perfect itself, in a way. Every generation, there are certainly mistakes or benefits that occur every time you mix up a gene pool, and, but what a beautiful story. It's a love story that feeds the earth, what is actually happening. And so, circling back as to your question, it's like I try to go below the surface. I try to get people to see what you can't see with the naked eye. And definitely psychedelics do that as well. We filter out a lot of data, but you want to be able to understand the energy of what is happening in front of you. And so by showing people alternate time frame and alternate scale, to be able to say that there are other points of view of perception that exist, whether it's a flower or a hummingbird or a beetle, whatever it might be, if you can look at it from their point of view, it will expand your consciousness. It'll open your heart. It'll make you a more loving person and make you just so much more aware, because we're all on this journey together. And to be able to, again, recognize literally what surrounds us. I mean, look at the mycelial network, the ground underneath your feet. How many people have no idea, obviously. Actually, I would say most people don't know that a flower turns into a fruit and not a vegetable, a seed. They don't. We don't know where our food comes from. And so if we became more awake and aware, more connected to the earth, more connected to the biological mechanisms that sustain life on our planet, then you would naturally become a protector of Mother Earth. You wouldn't have to tell people to be an environmentalist or recycle or do this or do that, vote this way, vote that way. It'll be inherently in your soul. I'm never going to hurt my mom. I'm never going to hurt my lover. I'm never going to hurt, the life that supports me.
Wow. I'm really appreciating the lens that you offer as an artist, but also as someone who's deeply connected and have access to the wonder and awe. And what you shared, that we're all on this journey together.
Yeah.
And you're trying to deliver something we cannot see with our own eyes. When I was watching your movie, Fantastic Fungi, I cry because what really touched me is that sense of interconnectedness that first starting with mushroom, and then that leads me to think, like you said, we are all on this journey together and we are all interconnected. No matter it's a being or a flower, a tree, even a river, like we are all connecting the way, and we are all given this gift, no matter it's to be a human and have a human experience, or given the gift of being a flower, being just the gift of our existence. And gratitude just flash naturally, like, open the gate. And I really touched to hear that, when you're creating these things, these are all your awareness and intention to create. And I wonder, like, when you talk about this word interconnectedness, and the more we are connected from that place, the more naturally we would love nature more. How does this interconnectedness can also help us as individual, to feel more belonging and to be accelerated on our spiritual path, like to have that, deep connection with source, with nature, with ourself, and with all the relations, all the being and things that's around us.
Well, I think when you realize that we're all connected, the power of community, and you have that, aha moment, and the question is really, how do I take that wisdom and become a better partner? How do I become a better worker? How do I contribute to my community, to the world? Because when you see nature's operating instructions, how they all benefit each other, whether they're sharing energy, nutrients, information, that the forest is a community, not a bunch of individual trees. Indigenous cultures have always had that respect. Well, then we need to model that behavior. We're not just individuals. We are interconnected. And when we are interconnected, guess what? Ecosystems flourish. It benefits everybody. And that's how, ecosystems do flourish. They encourage diversity because of like one type of plant dies, you have other plants that can take over. If we're all the same, then that could be a disaster from a biological, point of view. So diversity is always great, and overlapping relationships are great. When the pollinators go out there, I mean, sometimes, this flower is in bloom, and that dies in the spring, the summer flowers, the fall flowers, the winter flowers, so that there's always this energy for the pollinators to be able to continue to do their work to keep the plants alive, because the plants are the only organisms on the planet that take source energy, light energy, and turn it into chemical bonds called fuel, food, shelter, right? There's nobody else that can do that. Imagine with all the technology, nobody's figured out a way to do photosynthesis, and it's all about light energy. So what a miracle. And we have to honor that and respect it. And then you're going to make all the right choices, because you don't want to ever kill yourself knowingly, I hope. And it'll be instinctual. Like, I saved a cockroach this morning. It's rare to find a cockroach in LA, but I found one in my bathroom, put it in a cup, took it outside, threw him up in the air, and then his wings came out, which was pretty cool. But I know as a kid, in New York, I would have stepped on the guy, But what a miracle of nature. Apparently, they haven't evolved since the days of the dinosaur. They have such a cool design, they don't need to evolve. They've got an incredible, design that, somehow that they evolved into, which is so beautiful. So it's just a tiny example of being more aware and respectful to all living beings, because they all play a part. I don't know what the cockroach contributes to the ecosystem, but I know they do. Everybody does.
The word that's coming up to me as I hear you speak about interconnectedness and saving something as like a cockroach is sacredness.
Yeah.
Right? And that as we come into communion with nature as is, there is this sense, this feeling that we can feel deeply inside of us of engaging with that interconnectedness, engaging with a higher power, engaging with something so much more than my individuated ego. It reminds me of, there's a Zen Buddhist teacher, Adyashanti, that I love reading and we incorporate into our curriculum here at Ceremonia, that was asked by a student, why isn't meditation considered selfish, right? I mean, you're like sitting by yourself in a room, nobody there, and you're just going into yourself. And his answer is, when you quiet the mind and open your heart, you discover that the loving kindness that lays within yourself, that you want to spread to all humanity and to all beings, right? And this kind of like spiritual experience of self and in relationship with nature sounds very similar to me in what you're sharing. It's like, my experience with just something as simple as a flower or a bee can lead me to feel the love with all things, the gratitude for life itself. And what an incredible spiritual gift that is.
For me, it's a portal into nature's intelligence to be able to observe and to film, to slow down, to zoom in, to be able to try to understand all of that. And the lessons are deep. I mean, they are meditative. They are, philosophical. I've had cameras going nonstop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 50 years, shooting, time-lapse mushrooms and flowers and plants in my studio. And that, I just realized, is my meditation. When I'm in there, I'm so at peace with myself because there's a certain practice that I have to go through that, like any practice that you might do, like yoga, you could say is very, organized and methodical, and the same thing happens with the flowers. Like I have to, set the lighting. I have to do the composition. I've got to set the parameters of exposure and timing. All of that is a repetitive, in a sense, mechanical thing with a lot of variability because every flower is different and every time you light it, it's different. But for me, it's a very centering experience to be able to do that. And I think we all need to kind of find what that is. Maybe it's a walk, maybe it's surfing a big wave, whatever that might be. There are portals. Music is a good example as well, into the divine. We need to kind of find what that gateway is for each of us and to be able to nurture that feeling. And Chuchu, I don't want to forget what you said earlier when you said you watched Fantastic Fungi and you said you cried, right? Well, let me ask you a question. Why do you think you cried?
I think at first I was touched by the perfection of the creator and all the creation. And then I feel just amazed with how much amazing things and beautiful things are happening without us even have any conscious awareness. And also feel a sense of grief of oh my God, I am not being aware of this and missing out. And then deeply, it's the sense of gratitude for the gift of my life and gratitude for you to have some unique angle and are able to present something so, fantastic and marvelous that we completely don't have any conscious awareness.
It's beautiful. Sometimes I'm a little bit amazed, like at the end of the film, at a screening, where men and women come up to me and they say that with tears in their eyes. And I go, well, it's not a sad movie, right? And I mean, you could also be joyous, which would be another way of expression that emotion. But I believe that part of the reason why some people cry is that also it's a homecoming. I haven't been with myself, my soul, that reconnection to nature. And it's that feeling, it's so similar like when you're traveling, you finally come home and you get to slip in your own bed, and that you finally feel you're back home, really. And a lot of times we're not there, because of all the crazy stuff we do, not judging it. When I say meeting other people, going places, you don't have that chance to kind of be 100% within yourself. And I think in the movie, people have the ability to slow down, to kind of, they committed to watching the movie. They didn't know they were going to maybe go on a journey, and it's talking to them, I love the fact so many people said, oh, my wife dragged me to this movie. I thought it was going to be about mushrooms, like a cooking show or something and, mushrooms, and they came out and they said they had the deepest spiritual experience. And I love because what you're doing is you have low expectations going in. You're pulling the rug on the audience because if you said, "Hey, come watch this movie. It's the deepest spiritual experience you'll ever see," you're going to create a lot of disappointment, right?
Mhm.
But it's cool to just say, "Hey, come watch this thing called Fantastic Fungi," and you're thinking, "WTF? What is that?" Come watch the film called, Totally Tomato, or Popular Potato, or Fantastic Fungi. It's like,
Those are the sequels, right?
yeah. So I love the fact that we can disarm people who maybe would have been afraid to come see something if they were told, well, it's about healing the planet, it's about healing your body, it's about shifting consciousness, could be about psychedelics. There might be some people who go, I don't want to watch that movie.
You're making the unconscious conscious. You're also making the small really big,
Yeah.
right? I remember seeing another one of your films. Where was it? In Shanghai Disney that we were in, and it was the biggest screen in the world or something like that, 80 feet or something ridiculous. But what you're sharing, we have a workshop here that teaches a practical meditations, right? And it begins by everyone being blindfolded and very slowly biting into a piece of watermelon, right?
After ceremony.
Very slowly, like smelling a scent, very slowly listening to an instrument that's played.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating about that, it sounds so simple, but how often do we really slow down and enjoy the moment of biting into a piece of fruit? Mm-hmm. How often do we slow down and enjoy the moment of sipping a cup of coffee, right? Mm. And there's this, idea in maybe that people have meditation that in order to be in Zen, I need to be still, right? But what we really think is stillness is a gradient. Like, yes, you can be completely still and idle and sit in a lotus pose, but also slowing down gradually brings you in touch with that stillness that pervades all of life. And what your cinematography, like what your art seems to draw out, as you said, the unconscious conscious, like we're not consciously aware of the infinite amount of things that are happening outside in this world, right? How just a flap of a butterfly's wings can impact the movements of the clouds, right? And by like slowing down and tuning into that, we can get a sense of the great spirituality that pervades all things, right? And this word like that we're using here, spirituality, it's a very interesting word because it's another word that we're trying to communicate something. But the feeling of spirituality that we can get when in connection with nature is something vast, inexplicable. Like I can use as many words as possible, the entire human language, to try to explain to you what that feels like, but you've got to feel it for yourself. And it seems like what you're doing is you're providing that medium through technology, through modern science to help people slow down and feel that. I mean, your time-lapse photography is literally slowing time down.
Again, shifting your perspective is always really good. Psychedelics do that in a really beautiful way. So does like an aerial or macro shot. It shifts your perspective. And when you do that, obviously it's mind expanding. And when we do that, we become more aware that there is a universe out there that is loving, it's beautiful, it's kind, if we just want to figure out how to live in harmony with it. And that is the door we want to always go through. And it's not easy. I mean, it's not going to hit you in the face, whether you call it spirituality or transformation, religion, whatever it is. You got to lean into that. You got to actually work to find it. I have to work to find the beautiful location, to find that perfect moment, to capture everything in gorgeous light. You don't just aim your camera at the world. It's like peeling the onion. You got to go deeper and deeper. But that's the beautiful journey. That's the joy that I love and that anybody can have. Every time you go on a walk, I recommend everyone should just keep their eyes open. What is the light doing right now? Is it diffused, sharp? You don't need a camera, Look at the light bouncing off the leaves. Look at the crack in the sidewalk, What is that pattern say to you? How does it make you feel? Look at the color of that flower. I mean, oh, wow, it's beautiful. It's a red rose. Wait a minute. What does red make you feel like? Look at the beautiful dress she has on, right?
That makes me feel all sorts of things.
Well, I know, but then you go deeper. Beautiful compliment for Chucha. You got a really beautiful dress. So I want to understand deeper. Like, what is that wavelength of energy doing to me to make me feel a certain way? And here's something that'll really blow your mind if you want to go deeper. She's reflecting a wavelength of red, but she's actually absorbing all the other wavelengths. She is really the essence of everything but red, because red is what bounces off her into my eyes, but she's absorbing all the other wavelengths. So that puts another, prism on the experience. And again, there are no answers to this. These are things you love to ponder, things that you can, love to think about,
Yeah, it just enriches our life.
Yeah.
You talked about going deeper and peeling the layers of the onion. And I want to do that here. You've now mentioned psychedelics 2 or 3 times, right? And obviously, you love mushrooms. And, I think it's the anniversary of Fantastic Fungi being released coming out soon, right? The 5th anniversary?
5th anniversary.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, congratulations on that. You must feel like such a proud daddy.
5-year-old that can walk up on stage without daddy's help.
And in these 5 years, so much has changed, particularly with the world's view on psychedelics, right? Oregon legalizing psilocybin, then Colorado following suit with legalizing psilocybin and DMT, the active ingredient in ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm. It's part of Fantastic Fungi's contribution, I guess.
Yeah.
Totally.
Right? And so, I'd love to get your take in service of this theme of modern enlightenment, right? Clearly, we're here utilizing psychedelics as sacraments to help us create greater spiritual connection, right? What's your take on how to use psychedelics, where it's going, what the world needs to know about working with mushrooms or other psychedelics?
I think we're at a unique point in time, that is critical because of the environmental, degradation that's going on. We can't wait for multiple generations to become more evolved and more conscious. And I'm not trying to create a downer or whatever, but in the universe, there's always a balance between the yin and the yang. So now we have this situation which has never occurred ever on planet Earth. Last year was the hottest year ever on record that they said in the last 250 years that they can measure. And this year is going to be hotter. Okay. So get that data point. How do we deal with that? And I think that one of the ways that, the universe is laying the doorway to open our consciousness is through psychedelics, that we do become more conscious, that we do become more aware that we got to live in harmony, basically, with all living beings, plant life, animal life. And if we don't, well, there's going to be some significant, changes in terms of life on our planet. And so maybe it's drawing that energy in to a certain degree. And I also think there's certainly a movement that Fantastic Fungi helped catalyze, where I see an explosion of conferences, mushroom stores, gatherings all over the planet. It seems like we are awakening to this need of a higher level of awareness and wanting to connect with others to share that experience, similar to what you do at Ceremonia, that it is a need that we have. And actually, COVID probably pushed that further. That happened in the last 5 years where, everybody suffered from something unique, no matter where you are. Some people had worse experiences if they had friends or family that died, but everybody suffered disconnection from each other, from friends, from family, taking for granted all the little things in life, like going out to dinner with a friend, having someone come over, And that, I think, pushed the envelope forward as well, that hopefully coming out of COVID, there is this giant need of reconnection. And that's why we're doing the 5th anniversary tour, is that we were forced to leave the theaters as we were peaking. We launched in the fall of 2019. In March of 2020, we were going to have a mycelial screening of 500 theaters all over the world. It was booked. It was going to happen mid-March with satellite feeds to all these theaters on a global level. And we were trying to mimic the mycelial network and bring everybody together into a shared experience, a shared ceremonia experience. And we couldn't do it, because we couldn't recommend anyone going to a theater that might have been in a region where maybe the virus had spread. And, the information, if you remember, was like really sketchy back then. We didn't know if it was going to be only in a couple of places, and is it going to be for a week to shut down? It turned out to be 3 years, and so I kind of have a lot of faith, I think, in the universe, like that these forces all kind of happen in a sequence that hopefully moves consciousness forward. I would say in the last 5 years, we have more medical clinical trials happening in more universities all over the planet. I think 60 universities have medical trials with psilocybin and psychedelics. We concluded one at the Pacific Neuroscience Institute, combining my imagery with psilocybin to treat alcohol addiction. As patients were coming on, they were able to view the connectedness of nature to ease the anxiety, I think, for a lot of patients who probably had never had a psychedelic experience. And the results were positive from the combination than the psilocybin by itself, because there had been studies previously of psilocybin helping people with PTSD and addiction. So, wow, look at this. We could even make it a deeper experience, a more beneficial experience by combining the two, especially if you're inside of a room in a hospital, which doesn't have sacred energy for you to look at. And, one of the most important things I've discovered in the work that I do, when I did Mysteries of the Unseen World, a 3D IMAX film for National Geographic, basically looking at everything that the human eye can't see. If you actually look at human vision, normal human vision is a miracle in and of itself. The visible light spectrum is a narrow spectrum of energy that we can see with our eyes, but there's X-ray and infrared and ultraviolet and all kinds of, wavelengths that we don't see. Sometimes we feel them. Look at the internet. Look at what we're doing right now. There's energy waves that's enabling us to communicate, but we don't see that. But the big takeaway that I learned was 80% of the data we get comes into our eyes. And now with the prevalence of screens and technology and AI, more and more that becomes the reality. And you ask yourself, what healing modality is there for vision? We have massage for touch, we have music for hearing, aromatherapy for smell, healthy food for taste. Your eyes, I believe, are an extension of the brain. It is an immediate sensory receptor that takes light energy, which is the source. You can, get spiritual about that. Many cultures, the sun was the god, as we know, as a quote unquote, the source, right? Take that energy and immediately it hits, your retina, turns it into an electrical impulse. It triggers the brain, which then secretes hormones throughout your body. The moment you saw that beautiful shot in the movie, oh my God, it made you feel a certain way. That all happened inside of a fraction of a second, faster than it takes to ingest a psychedelic, for example. I feel we're just on the cusp of really learning, and I'm trying to push that envelope.
Wow. It's so unique to hear your lens, like through different sense, how we connect with source. And I'm noticing this thread that we're coming back to this same word, like consciousness, spirituality, psychedelics. And you mentioned that, what you are doing and what Ceremonia is doing is very similar. We want to guide people to a place of deeper connection, have more spiritual experience and meaning to everybody. And I see, psychedelic is the vehicle. Nature is a portal to divine, like you mentioned earlier. And psychedelics maybe not for everybody, but nature is available for everybody, and everybody can find that connection. I started my spiritual journey through psychedelics opening me up. And as I connect more and having more tools, I really felt like a lot of mystical experience that I experience are without psychedelic in nature. For example, when you mention like the chaos and the perfection, I had a yoga teacher training and the vision quest. My teacher just like ask this one question and look at everything in nature, just like, what is your secret? And after days of vision quest and just staring at nature and sometimes get so bored. And then he asked me, I said, nature's secret is like presence and acceptance, like loving what is. And then, I've done more vision quests in nature. Every time I do Qigong, I was like, I want to see birds and they would show up. I want to see an animal, they would show up. Like it feels kind of like crazy in a way that, oh my God, I am just by my mind and my feel sense of connection with nature. Nature respond to me. I even had, my teacher reading his book is like, my spiritual awakening starting me meditate and the ego come and then the ego cloud shaped. I experienced literally the same thing. I was observing a 10-day vision quest, observing the cloud. And the cloud becomes an ego, and then I was like, but there's no ego. And then 12 ego just flew by. And, it's so amazing. And like, I raised by science. I don't have direct access and believe in mystical experiences. But because of the wonder and awe that nature showed me, that really touched me. So like, I actually have a deep spiritual connection through nature. I would sometimes, when I was in Esalen, I remember I cried 5 times a day. I was not on any psychedelics just by staring at nature at different light and the beauty and the gratitude I feel I can cry 5 times a day. So my question for you is like, I want to hear how you discover the wonder and awe through nature. And because it's available for everybody, like what would your tips for people who are just exploring this connection, knowing it's available for everybody? Like what would you share with those people who wanting to find more connection to spiritual wonder through nature?
I'd say, well, first of all, we are nature, and that, you were talking about, reconnecting with nature. Well, once you reconnect, you are nature. And I think that's the big revelation. And we used to live in nature hundreds of years ago. And, more and more we're living in civilizations that don't connect with nature. Over half the planet lives in cities, And so by films, I'm just trying to get people to, again, reconnect and discover that they are nature, take advantage of every moment they can to be able to look at things deeply and become more present. And they feed each other. I'll tell you why. You don't have to, this isn't like hard to do. You know why? Because beauty is nature's tool for survival. We protect what we love. Easy to be seduced. Go to the gym and work out. And guess what? It'll be good for your heart, good for your body. You're going to live longer, but fuck, it's hard, But to be seduced by beauty, and we're hardwired to do that. So let's take advantage of that. I can be seduced by a wave that I go, oh, wow, I definitely would love to boogie board on that guy. Just the beauty of another individual, not sexual way, but just in an inspirational way as well. Like that's someone I want to hang out with, And beauty, we're hardwired to do that. And so we can lean into that and go, what turns me on? And whatever turns you on, music, skiing, nature, art, sport, whatever turns you on, go into it deeply, because it makes you present, puts you in the moment, puts you in the flow. If you're a sports guy, you can't be thinking of anything else. I mean, I'm not an extreme sports guy, but last weekend I did go boogie boarding and it was, a little gnarly. Am I thinking of anything else but, survival, or just staying on that board and trying to catch the wave and being in touch with the wave? And what is the wave? The wave is a fingerprint of the universe. That wave that I'm catching in California started in Asia. Those swells went all across the fucking Pacific. And what made that swell? Wind and the gravitational pull of the moon. All the energy of the universe is reflected in that one wave. And I get to ride that wave, but I have to also figure out where do I need to be to catch the wave? I'm not just laying like an idiot. I'm moving around. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm too far out, too far in. I'm in a dance with the energy of waves. And when you ask a scientist, what is the universe? The answer that you're going to get, it's all wavelengths, you know? Well, that's one way of looking at it. I'm not saying it's an accurate answer, but it is true from a scientific perspective, right? As a physicist, everything is wavelengths of energy, light energy, sound energy, gravitational pull energy. So how do I just like fall in sync with all of that?
Yeah.
In shamanistic circles, we have this term called the beauty way, and all this talk about beauty and being in sync with the energy of what's around us. It reminds me of a story that Ram Dass tells when he comes back from India. He's coming back bearded, white robe, walking around the city of New York with barefoot, right? And he walks by an alleyway and sees a homeless person, lying there, disheveled next to some trash. And he looks at it, he just is in his state of extraordinary presence, right? He is able to see the beauty even in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And when I think of that story, what I think of is, nature and the beauty that is so, obvious when we see snow on the ground or a field full of flowers. It's actually a portal. It's a portal for us, as you shared, to be present, right? And recognize that, again, beauty is just a word, but it's a word that conveys something that really touches something in our core, right? Something that we all recognize. And this beauty way is another word that kind of describes like the way of being with life in a profundity and the sacredness of it and the gratitude of every moment that's available. Because in another universe, in another timeline, we could have been a speck of dust or a stone. But here in this universe, in this timeline, we get to be Louie or Choo Choo or Austin,
Right.
appreciating what's in front of us.
Yeah. Well, from now on, the beauty way would not be Ramda's story, but it would be the story of Louis is trying to survive on gnarly boogie board at the same time, but also thinking about all the travel histories of the waves and the divine love universe. That's so impressive. Wow.
It's beautiful, again, to look at everything from multiple perspectives. I think this with Fantastic Fungi, it's grounded in science as well as the beauty of the time-lapse mushrooms growing and all of that. When you get the context and you understand what the mycelial network is doing from a scientific point of view, we talk about radioisotopes going into one tree, traveling underground and showing up in another tree. Suzanne Simard's experiment. Well, she scientifically proved that they are communicating, that the mother tree is helping her baby tree, well, that's a beautiful story. But visually, oh my God, is it beautiful as well. I didn't have to force you to look at something that's kind of weird. It was like you could turn off the audio track and look at it and be seduced and fall in love with it. That's what I love. I love the combination of both. And I think they enable each other to have a deeper understanding of life on our planet. And I think that's the journey that we're all on. I would almost describe beauty as the musical score that the universe created to orchestrate life on our planet. We danced to that music. There is an order to it. It isn't completely chaotic. So what's driving all of this behavior? And so you could say beauty, yeah, well, what does that relate to? It kind of relates to reproduction in many species as well. It makes us have choices that we decide upon, and it's a beautiful thing that it's there for us to enjoy, to really have an ecstatic experience with, which is better than having a terrible experience. Why not have it be pleasureful and joyful and amazing? Again, whether it's like the vista beauty of a landscape, loving another human being, it's a fucking pleasure trip. It's not hard work.
You mentioned this word a few times when you shared that we protect what we love. I have like tears behind my eyes. And you talk about the divine, the perfection and the chaos of nature, and like being a scientist, like how was universe and truth energy are explained. It makes me think of like when Einstein, he was traveling around US university and he get most asked is like, do you believe in God? And Einstein said, I believe in the God of Spinoza. And in the poem of God of Spinoza, Spinoza said, God would say, if there's this after this life, I don't guarantee you there's one after this or not. But rest assured, I wouldn't ask you, did you behave well or not? I would ask you, did you have fun? What do you enjoy the most? What have you learned? And I just resonate so deep with that. And on the same topic of like connection as nature, as a portal, and everything you make and every energy I feel from you, I see this like embodiment of a living human that had a lot of deep connection, because you can only guide people where you have gone, and you are able to interweaving all this consciousness, like bringing the slowing down mindfulness and presence in everything you make. I imagine because you have traveled and experienced this, we call enlightenment or deep spiritual connection yourself. And when you say we protect what we love, and the love we discover for ourselves, it's the same that we have for nature, because we are nature. My curiosity like drives to, when you started, do you find that love and connection, the portal to divine, through the work you're doing, or through you doing this work, you discover more and more? And what is that first love of you and nature, and that leads you to this long journey of sharing your uniqueness, bringing nature and spirituality together?
I would definitely have to give psychedelics the credit for opening me up to looking at nature as energy. The first psychedelic trip I ever took, and I had never read any books, and there was never, even the word energy was never used, but I realized that it's all energy. And if I had to describe God or the universe, one word would be energy. I saw it. I felt, I got it. And once you get it, you can't go backwards. So for me, as a filmmaker, to film things that the human eye can see is a little boring. I want to show people what they can't see, That pushed me definitely into doing things like, pioneering time lapse and slow-mo and micro and macro, and because that's what I saw on my first trip, and see things from a whole different perspective. And that is a giant turn on. And the other, I think, little secret in terms of why maybe people feel a certain thing when they watch my films versus maybe any other nature documentary is that I feel it in my heart when I'm filming it. You can't just like press the button on the shutter, and after you've set up the composition, the f-stop, and did all your calculations, which you have to do. And that way, I'm able to grab that emotional feeling, bring it back to me into the studio, where you look at it, where you add music to it, where you edit it, where you add, voiceover, when you make the color. I'm accentuating the feeling. I'm intensifying the feeling. I'm shaping it. I'm sculpting it. I'm polishing it to make it the most powerful fucking feeling there is, But think about the fact there's a composer today that conducts the score, and everybody in the orchestra has to play with feeling, right? And that score is being intensified, right? It's not just a score on a piece of paper. It is beginning direction for an emotional experience.
What I'm hearing is, the moment of heart opening and that being touched by the thing you're shooting is like a moment of tenderness and a moment of connection with the divine. And if you carry that tenderness and that connection even into the mundane of adjusting calculation, all the scientific things that doesn't feel as connected, but if you can carry that tenderness and that touch, that connection to divine, then your work, it feels like a message from God.
Yeah, I'm a messenger of nature's intelligence. I don't take the credit for creating it, which is very egocentric. If I'm in the flow, I want to be able to share that energy with you, and be able to have you feel what I'm feeling, as a messenger, just like any great musician that's jamming on stage, or any great athlete that's making, 3-pointers like 10 times in a row. He's in the flow. That's where we all want to kind of get to, if we can, is to be in the flow, to be able to almost pre-visualize what you want to have happen.
There's this like inside out dynamic that's happening between you as the filmmaker, the subject, which is nature, the cinema screen, and the viewer, right? Like you can have a viewer watching a beautiful vista, but they can be on their phones or they could be rushing around and totally miss it, right?
Yeah.
And similarly, as a filmmaker, you could be shooting something and be completely absent in your heart, being with the subject, and that energy won't convey through. It reminds me, when we do our 5-day journeys here, we have 2 night ceremonies and 1 day ceremony. The 2 night ceremonies, people are going really deeply inwards. And then the day ceremony, people are connecting, including connecting with nature. And what's so remarkable about that progression that we have the gift of witnessing all the time is that as people have released more of their own protective barriers, as they've gotten out of their own way, they're able to be more deeply present with what's out there, with each other, right? With nature. And I'm connecting these dots with this was it. What I'm hearing is it's your first psychedelic experience led you to peel back the curtains, to be able to be with nature, to be with beauty, to be with this artistry in such a way that so deeply inspired you to go and pursue this path of making the unconscious conscious, of delivering beauty to our doorsteps that has now impacted millions of people, right?
A lot of millions. I mean, we looked at some data, at least probably 30, 40 million people, I think, have watched Fantastic Fungi on Netflix. I also think that one of the magical connections is that the rhythms and patterns that I'm making visible are also the same rhythms and patterns that are inside every cell of your body, And so what you're doing is you're looking into a mirror of yourself, that energy pattern. I mean, spirals, and networks, and, the neurological pattern of the brain, the circulatory part of your system, the nervous system, the universe all mirrors the same rhythms and patterns. And so it's automatically like a healing experience. And so many people, when they have seen my moving arts series, which is, music and imagery of gorgeous places without words, I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds of comments where they claim that it healed them. Everything from children with autism to, teenagers that are suicidal, PTSD, stress, anxiety, cancer patients, end of life, all of that without me ever saying that's a healing modality. And there's obviously nature programs out there, and I've never claimed to a public that it's a healing modality, but people discovered it on their own, that it heals them. And the reason why is what I'm saying. I think biologically, every cell is going, I fucking know you. And you are making more cells or it's dying. It's binary. It's either one or the other. You're either growing or you're going the other way. And when you see things that are growing, that are flourishing, I want to be with you. I want to be on that train with you, and that makes me feel better, makes me feel healthier. I want to be part of life, right? So I think for me, that's a big understanding or revelation from the reactions I've gotten from people.
Thank you so much for the work that you have done, the inspiration that you've led people into, the beauty of nature, making the unconscious conscious. You mentioned moving art, and we have that on our TV. Right. I'm just wondering, to our viewers, where could we find more of your artistry? Where could we find more of the beauty that you're able to show this world?
So it's louischannel.tv or .com is a landing page that'll take you there. And the beauty of it is you can watch it on your, Apple TV, Roku, smart TV device. So you can watch it on big TV in your home, hopefully. Size matters. I'm doing something on the sphere for Earth Day. That'll be an LED surface that's about 7 football fields in size. That's where I think, I think the Louie channel might be the easiest way to find it. There's also, I think, a moving art also platform on YouTube. So you can find it.
Amazing.
Yeah, I just feel really deeply resonate with what you just shared. Like people were able to find healing, even you didn't have that intention, but because we have this connection with the source ourself and we want to choose life, we want to choose moving forward. My most important thing in my life is spirituality. And we were doing a lot of healing work in Ceremonia, but what we discovered is like healing is a byproduct of when we have that spiritual connection. And I imagine that's why people were able to receive so much healing just through such an embodied art that you created. And I felt like just like want to emphasize here, sometimes we focus too much on the healing, then they will attach to a result of being healed. But if we, just open ourselves to seduction of the beauty that is around us and just like to feel that spiritual connection and our existence is a gift at any moment, like healing happens naturally from that. And I think it's such a powerful message you were just sharing.
Thank you.
I just really wanted to thank you, Louie, for joining us on this podcast, for being on our board. Very excited to share ceremonies with you and be in nature with you.
I'm looking forward to it as well. And I love the fact that you guys are, leading people on a, path of self-awakening. And we all need to do that to make the world a better place.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much for sharing your playfulness, your wonder, and all your wisdom and your beautiful service and contribution to this consciousness movement and all the inner connectedness that is available.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Modern Enlightenment. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to check out our website, subscribe to our online community, and check out our social media links in the show notes for more resources and updates.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to stay connected with our upcoming episodes, where we continue to explore the intersection of modern science and spiritual wisdom. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep shining your light.